Welcome to The Critique. Today we're looking at a deep dive portfolio on women's health, covering everything from pelvic floor PT and the female athlete triad to body image and osteoporosis.
A lot of really strong clinical data in here. Let's get right to it.
Okay, so the first thing that really jumps out is that the material treats the physical body and the hormonal body almost as two separate things.
Yes.
You have the mechanical advice over here, which is solid, and the chemical or hormonal context over there, but they're just not talking to each other.
That's the core weakness right out of the gate. It separates the musculoskeletal advice, the pelvic floor exercises, from Summit Physical Therapy.
Right, the specific exercises.
From the hormonal context you get in the PCOS and sleep sections, and it completely misses the chance to explain why the body is reacting the way it is.
So the reader gets the what, but not the why.
Exactly. It's like two different textbooks got stapled together by accident. There's no synthesis.
Okay, so the suggestion is pretty clear. We need to integrate these systems. Show the listener how their hormonal health is directly, and I mean directly, dictating their physical capability and recovery.
You have to link the biochemistry to the biomechanics.
You can't train the muscle if you ignore the hormone. It's that simple.
So let's make that concrete. We could start with the female athlete triad. Right now, it's just presented as this big warning sign.
Low energy, menstrual dysfunction, low bone density. The classic definition.
Right, but it just sits there. The move is to connect it directly to the section on sleep and hormones. Specifically, that piece from Island Reproductive Services.
You mean the part about the cortisol spike from sleep deprivation?
Exactly that. Explain how that cortisol spike is actively making the low energy availability of the triad so much worse.
Because the cortisol is catabolic. It breaks down tissue.
It accelerates the whole pathology. Suddenly, sleep isn't just a nice-to-have recovery tip.
No, it becomes a biochemical necessity to prevent the triad. You're basically saying sleep deprivation puts your body in a state that mimics starvation.
Now the advice has teeth. It has urgency.
I like that. It really raises the stakes. And on a different note, this integration could also validate a lot of aesthetic concerns with, biological reality?
You're thinking about the body image section?
Yeah. The source on the fupa, the fatty upper pubic area, it focuses a lot on self-acceptance, which is, it's important.
But it's only half the story.
Right.
We can strengthen this by linking it to the Johns Hopkins source on the PCOS diet. That text is explicit about insulin resistance.
And how insulin and cortisol specifically target abdominal fat storage.
Exactly. So you're not just saying, love your body. You're explaining the mechanism behind why that stubborn fat is there in the first place.
You're validating the experience. You're telling the reader it's not a failure of willpower.
It's a symptom of insulin resistance. It shifts the conversation from self-blame to biochemical understanding.
Which gives the reader a path forward, address the insulin.
Okay, let's get even more specific. The pelvic floor exercises. This is where the mechanical isolation is, I think, most obvious.
Totally.
The Summit PT source gives you the split squat, the deep squat, standard stuff.
But then, buried elsewhere, there's that narrative review on the menstrual cycle.
The one that talks about estrogen affecting collagen synthesis and tissue stiffness.
Yes. So the suggestion is to bridge those two. Explicitly discuss how tissue laxity during, say, the ovulatory phase might change how you perform a deep squat.
So does the depth of that squat need to change? Is it riskier when your ligaments are looser because of high estrogen?
That's the question the text needs to answer. By integrating them, you turn a generic exercise list into a periodized, hormone-aware training program.
It becomes a dynamic guide that actually works with the user's cycle.
Let's move on. My next point is that the material relies a bit too heavily on standard medical guidelines.
And in doing so, it might be creating a false sense of security.
Yeah. Especially for certain groups.
The weakness here is pretty stark. It presents screening tools like the USPSTF guidelines for osteoporosis as totally authoritative.
As the final word.
Right. But it buries the lead that these tools often fail younger postmenopausal women. The guidelines say screen at 65 or older.
But the portfolio includes conflicting data.
It does. That JAMA Network Open study in the source material says these tools perform suboptimally for women aged 50 to 64. That's a huge deal.
So a 55-year-old reader might feel safe, but the tool watching her back only offers, what do they call it, fair discrimination?
It's not great. So the suggestion is to pivot the whole narrative. Don't just report the rules, critique them.
Move from following the rules to understanding the limitations of the tools.
Yes, we have to show the reader where the safety net has holes.
So to make that actionable, we could start by putting the JAMA findings right up against the healthcare.gov benefits list.
Perfect. Healthcare.gov says screening is a covered benefit for women over 65. You use the JAMA data to challenge that.
And explicitly state that for a woman aged, say, 60, the standard tools might miss low bone density entirely.
You're telling her that following the guidelines might mean a misdiagnosis. That's incredibly high-value information.
And there's a similar gap, I think, in how the female athlete triad is diagnosed. It seems very focused on eating disorders.
A huge blind spot. The text reads as if you have to have clinical anorexia to be at risk.
Which we know isn't true.
Not at all. The StatPearls data is clear that inadvertent underreading causes the same pathology. You don't need body dysmorphia to be in an energy deficit. You just need to be a busy athlete who miscalculates their needs.
So we need to broaden that definition.
Yes, and link it to the CDC source on vitamin and mineral nutrition.
The one on iron deficiency?
Exactly. Iron deficiency affects 1 in 6 women and causes fatigue. Argue that this can mimic the symptoms of the triad.
So you give the reader a better checklist. Is it low energy availability from undereating, or is it an iron deficiency?
It stops them from assuming a major psychological problem when it could just be a mineral one.
And this kind of nuance is also needed with body weight and bone health.
It is. The default is to think heavier weight equals more health risks.
But bone health flips that script.
It does. The USPSTF review found that women with osteoporosis often had a lower body weight.
Meanwhile, the submission has a whole section on physical activity for larger women, which is important, but it creates a single story about weight.
The suggestion is to put those two ideas in conversation. Show that while larger women face specific joint stress, the risk for osteoporosis actually goes up as weight goes down.
Gravity builds bone.
You create a more nuanced argument. Risks exist at both ends of the spectrum, but they demand totally different kinds of vigilance. One needs joint protection, the other needs a bone density scan.
Okay, let's shift to athletic performance. I think the submission really struggles to reconcile how athletes feel versus how they actually perform on paper.
Oh, that's a big one. The weakness is that it just presents contradictory data without resolving the tension for the reader.
You're talking about the menstrual cycle section.
Yeah. The narrative review says that things like VO2 max might not decline, yet 50 to 70% of athletes perceive a decline in performance.
And the draft just leaves those two facts sitting next to each other. It's confusing.
It's worse than confusing. It's almost like gaslighting. The science says you're fine, but you feel awful. So are you wrong for feeling tired?
Or is the science missing something?
Exactly. So the suggestion is to reframe this entire conflict. It's not a contradiction. It's a valid psychological, physiological feedback loop.
So we validate the subjective experience using the objective data.
We have to. Look at the data in that same review. It says while VO2 max is stable, perceived fatigue spikes in the early follicular and late luteal phases.
So the feeling is real.
The feeling is real. So let's offer a symptom-based training adjustment guide. Don't just list the study results.
Give them a practical alternative.
Yes. Say, look, in that late luteal phase when you perceive a strength decline, swap out your heavy powerlifting for the isometric abs or bridges with ball squeeze from the Summit PT source.
So they're still getting muscle activation.
But without the high central nervous system fatigue. You're saying you're not weak, your body is just busy. Here's how to train with that reality.
That's a plan B that stops the athlete from feeling like a failure when they can't hit a PR.
And we can take it further. Use the thermoregulation point.
The increased body temp in the luteal phase?
Yes. Use that to explain why endurance feels harder. It's just physics. If your core temp is already higher, the physiological cost of cooling your body is greater. The effort to stay cool is higher. It resolves the whole contradiction. It's not in your head, it's in your heat regulation.
Okay, last major point. The target audience. Right now, the advice feels generic. It sort of blurs the lines between a postpartum mom and an elite athlete.
It's a huge structural issue. The weakness is this one-size-fits-all tone.
Advice for all women.
Which ends up being useful for no one in particular. General walking advice is useless for someone training for a triathlon, and it's potentially harmful for someone 6 weeks postpartum.
So the fix is structural. We need to organize the content differently.
I think so. Let's suggest structuring it by life stage, or maybe physiological load instead of just by medical condition.
So the reader can immediately find themselves in the text.
They shouldn't have to hunt. A postpartum reader right now might see warnings about high-impact exercise for the athlete triad and get confused.
Thinking she needs to be jumping to build bone when she actually needs to be healing.
Exactly. So for the postnatal reader, you have to combine the advice on log rolling out of bed with the deep abdominal muscle exercises.
The gentle stuff.
And explicitly contrast that with the high-impact warnings from the triad section. Tell her, here is your safe zone right now, and here is the danger zone.
Be prescriptive. And for the aging reader?
Even sharper, merge the osteoporosis screening warnings with the fall prevention advice. Don't just say, do balance exercises.
Be more specific.
Use the bilateral dumbbell flexion from the Summit PT source.
A bicep curl?
It's not just a bicep curl in this context. The source says anytime your center of gravity changes, your core has to stabilize. For an aging reader, that exercise is a direct way to train for handling a shifting weight without falling.
So you're not building biceps, you're building stability. You're preventing a fall.
It's a specific mechanical intervention. And finally, for the reproductive age athlete,
What's the focus there?
get biochemical. Juxtapose the CDC's iron deficiency stats with the low energy availability from the triad source.
Because tired is such a vague symptom.
It is, and the draft treats it as just a normal part of training. The improvement is to frame tiredness as a biochemical red flag.
So you force the reader to ask, is my fuel tank empty or is my engine broken?
Is it an energy deficit or is it an iron deficiency? They are not the same problem and they don't have the same solution.
This restructuring is key. So to recap, the submission has fantastic raw data. It just needs to weave the mechanical, the chemical, and the psychological threads together.
Exactly. The main goal should be to validate the user's lived experience with the hard science that's already in the submission.
Don't just present the studies, synthesize them. Show how everything connects.
And make the science work for the specific biography of the reader, not the other way around.
We invite you to refine the structure based on these points and submit the work again. This has been The Critique.